Hi there, greetings everyone. Thank you so much for being with us. Um, I know that it's a Thursday evening. Many of you kind of could be doing many other things, but I promise we will make this worth your while. My name is Aditya, of course, and I am here to basically tell you a little bit more about what you could achieve if you choose to pursue a career in machine learning. And I guess give you kind of some insights as to, I guess we'll focus this session more on the USA rather than on India, but I'll try and give you a flavor of what a career in machine learning might look like in both countries. But we'll even keep it more general than that. Let's go through an overview of what is machine learning. How is it kind of being used to drive business outcomes at large companies? And then we'll talk about what can you do if you think that this is something that excites you and what you want to do. What can you do really to go and pursue your career in this field? Before we get into any of that, though, let me just briefly introduce myself. My name is Aditya, of course. I'm a general manager over here at Great Learning. Um, but I think I've been fortunate to have a fairly varied career before this. I've worked across venture capital investing, consulting, and also across, of course, education. So currently, of course, I oversee a few different kind of product categories at Great Learning, and of course, that includes master's degree programs, which we'll talk about later on. Earlier than this, I served as a growth investment professional with Lightrock. Now, Lightrock is a venture capital fund based in Switzerland. I worked out of the Bangalore office, and that means that I was kind of very fortunate to have a ringside seat into looking at many of the top startups in India, how they're genuinely being built and grown. And I kind of really got to participate in that journey. It was really, really exciting for me. And of course, I got to see how they all, leverage data science and machine learning to drive business outcomes. But we'll talk about that later on. And I have also worked as a management consultant with McKinsey, where I worked for many large companies, I think across sectors. This included telecom companies, tech companies, logistics companies in some cases. But in terms of my education, I hold a bachelor's in engineering from McGill University in Canada, a master's from Columbia in New York, and an MBA from INSEAD in France. Let's kind of get into the meat of this discussion right now. And let's actually kind of try and define what is machine learning. And then we'll talk about why it's important. But kind of at a very, very simple level, machine learning, how do we define it? It helps applications become more accurate at predicting outcomes without being explicitly programmed. Now, what does that mean? I think if you think about it, any single company that you work at, any single business decision is basically kind of a question of forecasting and predicting, right? Do you want to start a new business line? You're kind of taking a bet on whether this is going well or not. Do you want to kind of allocate resources to this factory or that factory or something? Again, you're kind of just taking a bet, right? You are kind of basically making a prediction. Now, machine learning kind of is a way of doing that without actually kind of a human intervening and without, in some cases, a human even telling the computer what to do. So, what are the common applications of this? Now, recommendation engines. I'm sure every single one of you watching this has probably used Netflix or YouTube or Amazon, right? And I think what you'd find is that they have kind of a tremendous ability at this point to predict what you might be interested in. Amazon will tell you, kind of what products you might be interested in buying. Netflix might be kind of interested in suggesting a new show that you should watch. And YouTube might suggest videos that will kind of keep you hooked. But in all cases, these recommendation engines are driving huge business outcomes for these companies. If you spend more time watching YouTube, you consume more ads, which is only valuable for the company. Similarly, if you kind of like what you see on Amazon, then you're going to kind of end up buying more from Amazon, and that's of course going to only be good for the company itself, right? So I've actually been told that recommendation engines themselves just kind of, if you look at the revenue of next product to buy on Amazon, it would be one of the largest companies in the world on a standalone basis. That's how powerful this is. And there are plenty of others as well. I think fraud detection is a big one these days. If you think about kind of your large credit card issuers and companies, the likes of say a MasterCard or JP Morgan Chase or something, these of course kind of have tens of millions of transactions every single day, right? And being able to figure out which 5 or 10 of these are fraudulent and which require immediate attention is, of course, going to be a huge business use case for them. And driving all of that is machine learning, of course. Spam filtering. I mean, all of you have Gmail inboxes, I'm sure. Some messages get sent to spam and some don't, right? And why is that? That's because Gmail is looking at your past behavior, what emails you have opened, what emails you have deleted, and what you've ignored. There are a few other things like malware threat detection, business process automation, predictive maintenance, which I guess applies to, physical industries like infrastructure and all of that. But I'm sure at this point you are following me right now and you're kind of seeing for yourself how kind of important and how powerful machine learning actually is, right? So, a little more on this kind of why is data science and machine learning important? And by the way, I am using the phrases data science and machine learning somewhat interchangeably. Now, some kind of academic purists would warn me against doing this. Some people would be perfectly fine with this. And I'll talk about the relationship between all of these terms in kind of maybe a minute or two from now. But why is it actually important? I think what you'd find is that all of the leading companies on earth, like Facebook, Google, Uber, have made machine learning and data science a central part of their operations. I would go so far to say that machine learning is a competitive advantage for many of these companies. And that means that you're having kind of an AI, a data science, and a machine learning arms race between all of your kind of large companies, right? If you think about, say, Flipkart and Amazon, both are kind of fighting each other on who can build better prediction algorithms to get you to buy more. Ola and Uber are again kind of in this arms race of data science as well in terms of how can they eke out more revenue per user, be it kind of making you take more rides, increasing how much you pay per ride, whatever it may be. This is kind of the driving force behind so many companies right now. Any Fortune 500 company that you see has a massive, an elite, and a well paid data science team, which is going to kind of help them understand consumer behavior. It's going to help them understand business operational patterns and also help them figure out what new products they should be kind of getting into and developing. But actually, kind of, I know I've thrown a lot of jargon and a lot of information at you. At this point, kind of, I think it might be relevant for me to take a step back and talk about the relationship, maybe kind of across the entire data science, machine learning, and analytics lifecycle, and what are the different roles that one could play if they're choosing to get involved in this, right? So I think if you look at an entire analytics project at a company, end to end, there are a few different phases to it. At the very start of it, of course, kind of, there are so many kind of data points being generated on a daily basis, but someone needs to help collect all of that data, kind of clean it, structure it in a format that it can be usable. And that is the role of a data engineer. Now, once your data has been collected, it's been warehoused and it's in a format that you would be able to use. The next step is you have to actually look into that data and kind of figure out what are the patterns emerging from it and what are the insights that you're getting from that. Now, a lot of people kind of call that classical data science. And I guess in a sense that is true because that is where kind of you are using many of the statistical techniques that you learn in mathematics to kind of make predictions. So that is the role of a data scientist. Now, once the data scientist has kind of built all these models, someone has to actually ensure that these models are going and being used and driving business outcomes, right? And that is the role of a machine learning engineer to take a lot of the mathematical modeling work done by a data scientist to deploy it across the company and to ensure that you're actually kind of making value, driving business outcomes from all of the insights that you built. So that in a sense is kind of the entire analytics lifecycle. And you'd be pleased to note that kind of depending on what really strikes you, what interests you, there are kind of different sub roles within analytics, whether you want to be a data engineer, a data scientist, or a machine learning engineer. I think all are kind of in hot demand right now. All are equally worthy fields, and I'll get into that in a little bit. Now, if you look at kind of, I know I've told you that every single Fortune 500 company on earth has a huge data science team, has a growing data science team, and is hiring right now. That's definitely a true statement, but nonetheless, kind of, if I have to help you focus your energies and figuring out where you kind of fit across the entire industry and where you'd want to work, I think you have broadly three options. in terms of where you'd want to deploy your data science and machine learning skills. Of course, big tech is one of them. You'd be looking at, heavyweights in Silicon Valley, the likes of, say, a Google or an Amazon or something like that. And I've talked about how Amazon leverages data science, Google, in the form of YouTube as well, for that matter. Now, many of your leading product companies, and I guess startups fit into this category as well, are also leveraging data science tremendously. Now you have kind of huge unicorns in the USA, companies like Stripe, companies like Airbnb right now, who are all kind of driving huge outcomes from data science and machine learning. And these, in many ways, are also extremely stimulating companies to work for. Because I guess in some ways, the problems that they're solving in some cases can be a little less structured. And you need to apply your brain and your creativity to kind of figure out what's going on over there. Versus, say, a Google whose ad, engine generates hundreds of billions of dollars per year, and you're just working on kind of optimizing that. But on top of that, you could also look at kind of genuinely working in industry. Industry, of course, encompasses many different things. If you really want to be kind of in a company that's building and making things, the likes of a Tesla would be a great, great opportunity for you. Similarly, if you think financial services is interesting for you, the likes of a company like, say, a Goldman Sachs is also using a lot of data science right now as they scale kind of their consumer banking operations, right? But basically, kind of across the board, you'll be looking at these three archetypes of companies. And I'll tell you how to get into them in a little bit. But basically, this is what you should know. The good thing is that the work in kind of the fundamental underlying principles are going to be the same, whether you're a data scientist at any of these companies. But the problems that you solve are going to be very, very different. So do keep that in mind as you think about where you fit kind of in the world of data science and machine learning. But now I think is probably the single question. This is the single most important slide that is going to that is keeping most of you up at night and is probably kind of going to draw the most interest in this entire presentation. So let's talk about what are the expected career outcomes if you were to kind of pursue a career in data science and machine learning. I think I've mentioned all of the different sub roles earlier. Of course, AI engineer. I know all of you are hearing about the AI revolution at the moment. Now, AI is basically just built on a foundation of data. So I would again call it kind of a subset of the entire data science lifecycle. And your standard AI engineers in the USA right now are looking at salaries anywhere from $92,000 to $140,000. By the way, I'm not making up any of these stats. I should have cited my sources. But you would find all of this information on websites like PayScale or Bureau of Labor Sciences in the USA. All of these, of course, are kind of based on the USA right now. But you'll be looking at basically kind of salaries well above six figures in most of these. And what I'm talking about is median salaries. I think kind of elite data scientists and machine learning engineers working at kind of some of the, what do you say, most elite teams in the top companies would actually make, many multiples of this. Now we've talked about data mining and analysis, very broad range of salary, $100,000 to $220,000. Your classical machine learning engineers are in huge demand right now, and we'd be looking at $146,000. Now, data scientists are kind of, as I said, varying from a very junior kind of data analyst type of role all the way to a very senior data scientist. Your medians would be looking anywhere in the range of $86,000 all the way to $157,000. And of course, we have business intelligence developers who kind of help all basically category and P&L leaders make better decisions. They'd again be looking at in the range of $100,000. But I hope kind of this gives you confidence that this is a career path that you absolutely should be pursuing, because the financial rewards of doing so are absolutely tremendous, as you can see. We already talked about the fact that you would be solving the most important problems at many of the most important companies on earth. The other side of that equation is that you would be rewarded very handsomely for doing so. And I hope this is kind of attractive to every single one of you. Now let's talk a little bit about the USA. You would have noticed that most of my presentation has been USA centric at the moment, right? But let's talk about why that is. I guess this slide is titled Why Study in the USA? But the more important question is why work in the USA? Studying is just a mechanism to get you a job over there, right? So why do you want to be in the USA though? Of course, it is the single largest economy in the world, a GDP of, I think, upwards of $15 trillion at the moment. So that's absolutely tremendous. And of course, that means that gives you the most number of job opportunities. If you look at the tech revolution, the tech arms race at the moment, the USA has a significant lead. All the kind of top R&D projects and all of that happen out there. Similarly, all the top enterprises are headquartered over there. So this is kind of leading to the most job opportunities for the most qualified tech professionals. Now, of course, you have a high quality education system out there. Companies like Google and Amazon are not built without kind of skilled professionals there, right? And these skilled professionals obviously are gaining their skills through the highest quality education system in the world. And this, of course, means all of the above facts combined will lead you to an excellent quality of living. Basically, kind of, I guess they call it the American dream. Now I fully subscribe to it. So, of course, kind of the one program that we have at Great Learning that will allow you to get to all of the jobs that I talked about earlier is a program by the University of Arizona. And I'm sure many of you are familiar with this university, of course, because it is such a tremendously kind of prestigious university. But let's just go through some of the highlights over here. We're talking about a top 100 global university of the tens of thousands of institutions that exist across the world. This has genuinely made it into the top 100. That is phenomenal for me. And it's within the USA, a top 50 public university. You can think about again the number of public universities out there, all competing for attention, all competing for funds, and all of that. So, this accolade is hugely, hugely important. And I think a fun fact here that all of you should know is that NASA is one of the top collaborators with the University of Arizona. Many of these, space missions that you see, I think you would have heard of Apollo and Challenger and all of that, have in some way been kind of done in collaboration with the University of Arizona. So that is kind of an indicator of how powerful this university is. And by the way, while I keep talking, all of you are welcome to post your questions and answers and comments in the chat window. I have visibility to it. I can kind of pick those up as we go. But let's talk about the specific program at hand. We're talking about a master's degree in information science and machine learning. Now, I know I talked about the entire analytics lifecycle earlier, right? Which talks about how you go from data engineering to data science to machine learning. This program kind of gears you up for a career in any one of those parts. And that's because information science is basically kind of the end-to-end spectrum of all of these things. So we have a program which is what's called a hybrid program. You would start your learning online and you'd end it in the Tucson, Arizona campus. I think many of you would have heard about this already. I'm not going to go into it too much. But let's again kind of just revisit what are the prospects if you do this program. You're talking about getting into a field which has over 300,000 vacancies only in the USA, and which is going to open the door to a highly rewarding and a highly paid career, right? We talked about becoming a machine learning engineer, a data scientist, earning upwards of $150,000 in the USA. Now, that isn't going to happen out of thin air, right? You are going to need a credential that is recognized by all of the top companies out there. And similarly, kind of a pathway to get a work visa into the USA, right? And that's why I recommend our program for that. Of course, there are other programs out there, but the University of Arizona is kind of a no regret program, one that you absolutely cannot go wrong with, because it's going to get you kind of a shot to work at your Amazons or your Googles or whatever it may be, right? And if you look at the University of Arizona, what you would find is that there's a 92% employment rate out there. That's kind of absolutely phenomenal, in my opinion. 92% of people who attend this institution end up in not only a job, a high quality job. And we've talked about the companies that you could be looking at. We're talking about Boeing and Tesla and NASA for heavy engineering, American Express and Goldman Sachs for financial services, Google and Apple for tech, and Microsoft, and just so many others. It's a truly magical place. But how does this actually happen? You have a bunch of different networks. Your Bear Down network, for example, which allows you to look at the entire kind of directory of alumni from the University of Arizona. And by the way, I think 15, 20,000 people graduate from this university every single year. So you can imagine there'd be hundreds and thousands of alumni across the USA. You'd be able to look into every single one of them, find out where they're learning, drop a quick connection request, and be able to kind of have a conversation with them and ask them, how did you kind of go about your career? What can I learn from you? And similarly, more close to home, you have a Wildcat Mentor Society, where seasoned mentors will kind of understand what your aspirations are and guide you towards them. Now, there's going to be a life lab, which will help you, of course, with the very tactical things like resume building and interview preparation and all of that. And Handshake is going to be your job board where you look at all of the different job postings that are available out there and the campus interview system. You would, of course, post your application through this Handshake portal. You'd be informed whether you get an interview or not, and you would take it from there. And basically, I think, given the reputation and prestige of this university, they have put immense thought and dedication into building this entire engine. I would literally call it a kind of high functioning engine at this point to ensure that you get to the career outcome that you want. And I think all of the alumni surveys will point to the fact that people are very satisfied. So, what are some of the highlights of this hybrid program I talked about? You save up to 55 lakhs versus if you were to do 2 years fully on campus, because as we mentioned earlier, your first year would be done online. Now, you can earn and learn at the same time because if you do your first year of the learning online, you can keep a full time job during that. You of course get 36 years of STEM OPT. That's a fancy way of saying that you have the right to work in the USA for 36 months after you graduate from the program, and that means that you can pursue a job out there and get all of the associated benefits with that. Now, there's no GRE, there's no TOEFL, and there's no application fee. So there's literally no kind of cost to applying. There's no reason to not apply for this program for anyone considering pursuing a career in the USA. Your transition and adaptation would be very smooth, and we guarantee that at Great Learning. Now, as an international student, you would also be allowed to work up to 20 hours during a semester, and this would be mostly on campus. Some of the roles you'll be able to look at are teaching assistant, very, very popular. You could look at a library monitor. There are a series of other roles out there. I'll let you kind of read this slide for yourself. But this is basically the purpose of this is to help you offset the cost of all your tuition, right? So you'll be looking at earning $15 to $20 every single hour. And that is going to be tremendously helpful in covering your living costs, kind of covering the cost of your tuition, and basically just making a program that's already pretty affordable even more affordable for you. So if everything I've told you excites you, and if you think that this is a program that would kind of be suitable for you, here's the application process. The first thing you would do is apply online. The application form is pretty easy. It's kind of probably going to take you just about 5 or 10 minutes. And you need to note that there are no additional tests or prerequisites required. There's going to be no GRE, no GMAT. In most cases, there's going to be no TOEFL required. Of course, your admissions counselor can walk you through that. But it genuinely is really simple. It's just about spending 15 minutes of your time. Now, after that, our team is going to basically get in touch with you and just kind of ensure that you're eligible for this program. Because, of course, we don't want you wasting your time and kind of giving you false hopes about this program. So we just want to run a basic check as to whether you are kind of eligible for this program or whether you would need to kind of maybe pursue something else. Now, there would be our team would just quickly assess your application once we've deemed you eligible so that we can give you a timely response as to whether you're going to go ahead with this program or not. Now, after that, if you are selected, you receive an acceptance letter from the university. It'll give you instructions on how to pay for the program and how to join the program. I think that's an immensely satisfying step that puts a smile on so many people's face. And we, of course, hope that as many of you as possible get to step 4. But I think the only thing I want to reiterate here is that this is as simple as it gets in terms of applying for this program. There's literally no downside to doing it. It's really easy to do. Every single one of you watching right now should really go ahead and do it. And of course, I know this program is by the University of Arizona. But at Great Learning, we're just kind of also helping out in certain ways to ensure that it's as seamless as possible for you. So I talked about all our, assistance with the admissions process. We'll help you draft an SOP, a statement of purpose. We'll help you fill out the form, everything you need to do. Now, once you've joined the program and you'll be looking to migrate to the USA, we will help you get what's called an I-20. That's basically kind of a document that's going to help you get your visa. After that, we'll help you actually prepare for the visa interview and submit your documents and all of that. We'll basically do everything we can to ensure that you get to campus as easily as possible. And finally, you would have a program team walking you through the program. This basically means that if you're stuck on your projects, if you're falling behind, whatever it may be, our program team is going to be there for you and it's going to ensure that you stay on track. Similarly, we're going to be looking to get industry experts for you, set up doubt clearing sessions for you, whatever it may be. Basically, our team is there for you, and we have noticed that very, very few people fall behind when they're placed in the care of our program team. Thanks so much. That kind of concludes the presentation that I had for you today. I'm not seeing too many questions in the chat window, but I leave it open for a couple more minutes. I'd like to see as many people as possible sharing their questions, and once that's done, we can wrap this up. So why don't you post a couple of questions? I'll leave this open for a minute. And anyhow, I mean, this might be the end of our presentation, but this is definitely not the end of anything else. All of you would be assigned a program advisor. All of you are able to kind of ask your doubts and questions to that program advisor. And of course, in the chat window, we have posted how you can reach out to us by email, by phone, whatever it may be. So this, in my opinion, is just the beginning of a long journey. It's not the end at all. Please remain in touch with us. And I encourage as many of you as possible to apply for this program. I promise that it'll be truly transformational in terms of your career and in terms of your life outcomes. So thanks again then. Have a wonderful evening or a wonderful day, depending on which part of the world you're in. And I hope to see some of you in the upcoming cohort for this program.